Hello, New York Giants fans. The Giants just concluded rookie minicamp, which was held Friday and Saturday at Quest Diagnostics Training Center in East Rutherford. So let's talk about some impressions from the 2 days of minicamp. Ed Valentine of Big Blue View here on the Big Blue View YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. All right, I had an opportunity to be in East Rutherford on Friday to speak to head coach Brian Daboll, to watch practice, to speak to first round pick Malik Neighbors, second round pick Tyler Nubin, and third round pick Andrew Phillips. Was not able to attend on Saturday to watch the second practice and speak to the remaining draft picks, but I do have some thoughts on those guys as well. So let's get into it. And first of all, let's be realistic here. If you're looking for impressions of what we saw on the field, that's not what you're going to get today. The Giants worked out for barely more than an hour on both days. Head coach Brian Daboll has been clear over the last couple of years that he doesn't really want to push these kids too hard on the field after the long draft process that they've been through. You have to recognize, everything that these guys have been put through in recent months, and the fact that really one thing they haven't done a lot of is practice a whole lot of actual football. What they've mostly been doing is doing combine training, doing track training, training to get the best test scores they possibly could. So the idea isn't to overload these guys on the field and push them physically. What the Giants did over those 2 days was mostly individual drills, mostly movement stuff, not a whole lot of competition. In fact, the 2 days of practice featured very minimal 7-on-7 action, and none of the draft picks or undrafted free agents even participated in those portions of practice. Those portions of practice, the 7-on-7 competitive portions of practice, were reserved for tryout players only, for the coaching staff, for the front office to get a look at some of those guys who were hoping to earn a contract on the 90-man roster. And the only player who was signed, the only tryout player who was signed out of the 61 tryout players who were in attendance was SMU defensive tackle Elijah Chapman, a guy who was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list, a guy who's a 6 foot, and reports vary on his weight, but he's 6 foot. Some reports say 278, some reports say 291, but he's a short, squat, powerful player. And it's interesting because when I was there on Friday, the defensive line group, under the direction of defensive line coach Andre Patterson, was going through drills just a few feet away from where reporters were stationed inside the field house at Quest Diagnostics. And Chapman is a guy who stood out. He's a guy who you could see the power, you could see the explosion, you could see the pop in his hands. And I immediately thought on Friday that if anybody gets signed out of this tryout camp, that Chapman would have been a possibility. And that, of course, turned out to be the case. So, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that simply to recognize the fact that this was about movement. What these guys are trying to do is, what they're trying to look at is how these guys move. These guys are in shorts and t-shirts. You're not doing live blocking, live tackling. But really, it was noticeable that Chapman stood out. Don't know what will happen once we get to mini camp, once we get to the OTAs, once we get to training camp. But he did make himself noticed, and he did earn a contract. So good for the young man. as he tries to create an NFL career for himself. All right, what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the players who the draft picks who spoke to media over the weekend, give some impressions of some of those young men. And as I said, you don't get there's nothing really to report, excuse me, about what these guys did on the field. Really, first impressions, the way they spoke to the media, the way they carried themselves. Sometimes over the years, as you've watched these guys, you've been able to see that, oh, this guy just doesn't look like he belongs here. There might be a problem with this guy. You get your first impression and it's not a great one. I can tell you that Kadarius Toney a couple years back, with the shoe incident and not making it through either of the rookie minicamp practices, and the way that he spoke when he talked to media, didn't make a great first impression. And we know that Tony's tenure with the Giants didn't go well. But I would say that the players who spoke to media over the weekend, especially the ones that I spoke to, judging from the transcripts and the videos and everything that I've seen from the players who spoke on Saturday, which would be the fourth, fifth, and sixth round picks, um, those players also seem to acquit themselves very well and make good impressions. Um, First round pick Malik Neighbors spoke to media, was the first player to speak to media, and what came across when you spoke to Neighbors was how much he loved football, how much he understands that football has done for him and for his family. He said point blank, he said football saved my life, and not that he was in a dire situation where his life was in danger, but he said that when he looked at his life as a kid, he said he didn't know what else to do except play football. He didn't know what other path there was for him other than football. And he's made his way to the NFL as a number 6 overall pick in the draft, and a guy who could have a terrific career as an NFL receiver. It's obvious that he loves the game. It's obvious that he appreciates the game. Said that the first thing he did was buy a house for his mom, something that she had never had before. She'd never owned her own home. Said he was very proud to be able to do that, very proud of not only what football has done for him, but what it has now also done for his family. Obviously, really, really good first impression of Malik Neighbors. Really, really impressed with the humility that he showed, and with the love of the game that Malik Neighbors showed in speaking to the media the other day. Second round pick Tyler Nubin, safety out of Minnesota, 22-year-old kid. Joe Shane, in his press conference after drafting Nubin on night 2 of the draft, Shane referred to Nubin as a culture changer in Minnesota, and the maturity of Nubin, his desire to lead, his desire to help the players around him, is something that came across in his media session on Friday. He spoke about spending some time, as much time as is allowed by league rules. I guess he spent about an hour a day after the draft, leading up to mini camp, going over plays via Zoom with defensive backs coach Jerome Henderson and a couple of other Giants defensive assistants. And he said a lot of that was not only about wanting to get to minicamp and be able to put himself in position to succeed, but wanting to be able to put the players around him in positions to succeed as well. We all know that communication in the secondary is vital. There needs to be someone back there making coverage calls. There needs to be someone back there positioning their teammates and making sure they're aware of what's going on or what they might expect based on the formation, based on the down and distance, based on what the defense sees from the offense in that situation. Sounds to me like Tyler Nubin Whether he can do that as a rookie or not, I don't know, but it sounds to me like Tyler Nubin wants to be that player. He said that he feels like leadership can come from anywhere, no matter what your age, no matter whether you're a rookie or a veteran or whatever. And I don't know that Tyler Nubin will jump to the forefront as a leader right away, but I do think that eventually Tyler Nubin could become that for the Giants defense. I did think it was really, really interesting after the draft when Joe Shane was discussing the young defensive core that the Giants have put in place, core of players not only on their first contract, but guys like Bobby Okereke, guys like Dexter Lawrence, guys who are on second contracts, but guys who are on contracts that are going to keep them in New York for a while. When he spoke about that core, he included Tyler Nubin in that core, which tells you what the Giants think of Nubin and what they're expecting of Nubin. So, again, another guy who was very, very impressive in speaking to media and making a first impression. The other guy that we had a chance to speak with on Friday was third round pick Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. And there's been some confusion, some speculation, some wondering, why did the Giants draft a guy who scouting reports say is primarily a slot cornerback when they already had Cordale Flott? And we pretty much learned the reasoning for that over the weekend. The Giants see Phillips as a slot guy. Joe Shane has said that's where Phillips will begin. Phillips on Friday said he much prefers to play in the slot, much prefers to play at the nickel, that he feels at home at the nickel. He feels like he can play outside, but he feels better inside at the nickel. He said, he's more or less, talked like a kid who's on a mission, to help prove that the nickel position is just as important in the modern NFL as the boundary cornerbacks are. And he's actually right. I mean, there are so many receivers on the field and so many tremendous slot guys, small, quick guys, then big slot guys. There's so often in the NFL now, three receivers are on the field, requiring at least three corners. So Phillips is a guy who wants to be a slot corner. Cordale Flott, drafted in 2022 in the third round, is a guy who's played a lot of slot in 2023. Once the Giants benched rookie Trey Hawkins and moved Adoree Jackson back out to the outside, Flott moved into the slot position and primarily played there in 2023. In 2022, however, Flott, as a rookie, played almost exclusively on the outside. So it sounds like, what Brian Dable was saying. He said he has confidence in Cordale Flott, when he was asked about the outside corner, if Phillips is going to be inside. He said he has confidence in Flott. Sounds like Flott's going to get the first opportunity to win that job. So the Giants aren't looking at Phillips and Flott as duplicates, as guys that have the identical skill set. I think they're looking at Cordale Flott as an outside guy who can play inside and as the guy who's most likely to be the starting boundary corner opposite Tay Banks. All right, one other thing I wanted to mention, as I said earlier, I was not there on Saturday, but I found some of the remarks by running back Tyrone Tracy, fifth round pick out of Purdue, to be really interesting. Had a chance after the draft to talk to Lamar Connard, who was the running backs coach at Purdue last year, guy who helped convince Tracy when he transferred for his final year of college eligibility, transferred from Iowa to Purdue, guy who helped convince Tracy to switch to running back after 4 years as a wide receiver at Iowa. And, obviously that jump started Tracy's ability to make it to the NFL. Connard had said, when I asked him, if Tracy could have made it to the NFL as a wide receiver, Connard said no. He said he's not, maybe not fast enough. Maybe, for whatever reason, he said he's not that dynamic as a pure wide receiver, as a running back, as a kickoff returner, maybe as a punt returner. That's a different story for Tyrone Tracy. Connard had said to me that it was very emotional. It wasn't easy for Tracy to transition to running back. Tracy on Saturday told media that that he agreed with Connard that he probably doesn't make the NFL if he stays at wide receiver. That the only way to fulfill his dream of being an NFL player was to move to running back, position that he had played as a high school kid, but moved to wide receiver at Iowa. Said he would have liked to have played running back at Iowa, but the team had running backs, needed him at wide receiver. So that's what he did for the benefit of the team. And that shows a team first attitude from a young man. And you have to like that as well, because in the NFL, there's 53 roster spots. Guys have to be able to do more than one thing. You like team first guys who aren't, all about me and all about, I have to get my touches. I have to get this. I have to get that, whether it benefits the team or not. Just again, I liked the awareness from Tracy that he knows that he wasn't going to be an NFL wide receiver, the willingness to switch positions. I like the willingness to play a position at Iowa that maybe he knew, wasn't going to be his best path to a future as a pro football player, but that was best for the team he was playing for. I like the young man's attitude. I like his awareness. So just another player to be excited about. All right, the Giants will be continuing their off-season program. Phase 3 is coming up soon. Brian Daboll said that he's not sure, doesn't have any news at this point as to whether quarterback Daniel Jones will do much work in Phase 3 coming up here in another week or so. But we'll keep you guys informed as to what happens with Phase 3, as to what happens with those workouts. There will be 10 OTAs, on-field sessions. Media will have access to 3 of those. I will try to get to those, get some firsthand impressions of how the young players are mixing in with the veterans, what we see from the quarterbacks, what we see from Evan Neal, what we see from Brian Burns, what we see from all the new Giants. And we're inching closer and closer to football. This week is supposed to be the NFL schedule release. We'll have all the information, all the details on that throughout the week. As for anything and everything that impacts the Giants in terms of the schedule. So please, keep checking bigblueview.com for all of that information. Thank you once again for supporting the channel and for watching the show. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.